So, Bismillah, walhamdulillah. Today we're going to be talking about the Quranic perspective of the essence of man, of what does it mean to be a man, the essence of it. And I think this is very important from many perspectives. And then also the simultaneous contrast Quran does with the essential quality of the female. And what I wanted to do actually was, let me just send this to myself very quickly. I just want to take my notes and actually show it to all of you, even though my notes would probably have some typos, but that's okay, inshallah. SubhanAllah. Okay, we'll come to this, inshallah. So let's start by listening to the recitation of the Quran from the place that we will be, inshallah, discussing everything. So let us start from, and then you can read the English translation with the, and then we'll start our discussion, inshallah. And
Mute. There we go.
no need for English. Okay. Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah.
ولما ورد ماء مدين وجد عليه أمة من الناس يسقون ووجد من دونهم امرأتين تذودان قال ما خطبكما قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير.
So let me just give the background of these verses. So this is a time, if you remember, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was, let me actually show it to you from the Quranic verses so that you kind of get the idea of what happened. وَدَخَلَ مَدِينَةَ عَلَى حِينٍ. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he enters the city, okay, where Bani Israel was. So this is, Surah Al-Qasas is specifically focused on the Pharaonic aspect of how Fir'aun functions, okay? So Taha, so there are two major surahs that talk about Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. And one of those is Surah Taha, the other is Surah Al-Qasas. And in Surah Taha, there's more emphasis on the magic aspect. Okay. Surah Al-Qasas, the one we're going to study, is more emphasizing on the Pharaonic aspect. Okay. So now when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, as you know, he was part of Bani Israel, right? He was one of the Bani Israelis. So Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is part of Bani Israel, and he grew up in the royal palace as if he's one of the Qibtis, which is the Qibti was the tribe of the Pharaoh, right? So he was raised as a Qibti, even though he was Bani Israeli. But many people uh, kind of like look down upon that. Who is this kid that has been raised as one of us when he's not one of us? And so throughout his life, he would be made to feel, there would be some loyalists, very strong, extreme loyalists who would be like, we don't like Musa no matter what. Now, in this situation, what happened is, as Musa والسلام, is growing up, one day he enters the city. He's a Bani Israeli, and he feels the pain of his people, and he's part of royalty, right? And so he enters the city, and he sees one of the Qibtis doing what he saw was wrong to one of the Bani Israelis, and he stood up for that person. The next day he enters the city, he sees the same thing. That same person who he had hit, and what happened is that man that was oppressing the Bani Israeli, he hit him in the face, not to kill him, but to, hurt him, but he died. Okay, so he punched him and he died. Now, the next day, he sees the same Bani Israel, the person from his tribe, fighting with another person. He said, then the problem is you. You're the one that's always fighting with everyone. And he was scared. This person, he punched that person. And what happened as a result is that that person died. So now he says, oh, you're the, you did this murder. You're the murderer. And then now the whole elite found out from there. And now there were people in the system itself, meaning the Pharaonic system, who had told Musa, because he was part of the royalty. So there were some loyalists who felt for Musa also. So one of them told him, look, I'm giving you sincere advice. You need to go away. They're going to pin this murder on you. Okay. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he runs for his life. And so this is kind of like the story that we have. So this is the setting. The setting is Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is being hunted by the Pharaonic system. So he has to go out to a place where the reach of Pharaoh is not there. So he comes to a place near the Aqaba River. I can even show you the map, but he comes to the place of the Aqaba River, or what is also known as Trans-Jordan area. And when he's there, let me see if I can show this to you very quickly, and then we'll go back to the Quran. Gulf of Aqaba. So this area here is kind of like where he was, around this area. So if you look at Egypt is here, right? Egypt is here. So he goes across to Sinai, because this area, Sinai is still controlled by this area of the Sinai Peninsula, this area of Sinai where the Mount Sinai nowadays is considered to be. This area is still controlled or under Pharaoh, okay? And a lot of the events that are taking place in the time of Musa, for example, when Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam in Khidr, right? So you have the pirates, and you have, a situation of not a lot of safety. In that situation, it's still this area that is controlled by Pharaoh. So you have Pharaohs under Pharaohs, like the pirates who were taking the boats, okay? So he had to cross Egypt, and then he had to cross this Sinai Peninsula, and he had to go into this area over here. And, this is just north of Mecca and Medina, okay? Just north of Mecca and Medina, where I'll just touch upon it. I won't go much into it, but it seems like Shuaib alayhi salam was also doing Hajj into Mecca, Okay, and so clearly, if you read the Bible, you'll find out that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam intended to go into this area of Arabia, okay, where even the Jews settled in Medina and so on and so forth. Now, so this is just to give you an idea of where Fir'aun was and where Musa alayhi salatu wasalam went, to kind of give you a plot of what was happening. Now, in this situation, what happened is Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is there. He's very tired. He's obviously raised to be part of loyalty, but now he got to know, and this very important point, he got to know about the evils of society, and he got to know about the pharaonic model, how it works from the inside, before he learned about Nabuwa and Islam and the Deen under Prophet Shuaib alayhi salatu wasalam when he makes this travel, right? Even though he did believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is very clear that he held on to the beliefs of Bani Israel, but then he gets his training under Prophet Shuaib alayhi salatu wasalam most likely. Okay, so now when he makes this travel, so that setting, okay, so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at that setting. So now let's go back to the Quran. Okay. Oh, maybe you all can't hear yet. Hold on one second. Let me just.
فلما أن أراد أن يبطش بالذي هو عدو لهما قال يا موسى أتريد أن تقتلني كما قتلت نفسا بالأمس.
So this is about the day before, or the few days before, where he was blamed on the murder. Okay, so as he was about to strike, the one who was their enemy said, "Oh Musa, do you intend to kill me as you killed someone yesterday?" Because he was trying to save him yesterday, because he thought he was being oppressed. You only want to be a bully on the land. Jabbar is the word that's used, and do not want to be a peacemaker. Okay, so this is what was Musa was being set up, so to say, to take him out of the position of loyalty. This was being, and this will become clear as the verses continue.
فلما أن أراد أن يبطش بالذي هو عدو لهما قال يا موسى أتريد أن تقتلني كما قتلت نفسا بالأمس إن تريد إلا أن تكون جبارا في الأرض وما تريد أن تكون من المصلحين.
Over here, I want to mention the person reciting this. His name is Sheikh Khalil al-Khusri. He's known in the world of Qira'at and Tajweed. He's the best reciter when it comes to Tajweed. So that's why I chose him. Even he may not be like a pop singer, but his Tajweed is absolutely impeccable. He is the gold standard of Quranic recitation.
وجاء رجل من أقصى المدينة يسعى قال يا موسى إن الملأ يَأْتَمِرُونَ بِكَ لِيَقْتُلُوكَ فَاخْرُجْ إِنِّي لَكَ مِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ.
وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ. So a man now came to protect Musa alayhi salatu wasalam from the far part of the city, meaning he had to make a big struggle. He came running all the way from, he ran and didn't stop. Okay, وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ يَسْعَى قَالَ يَا مُوسَى. He said, "Oh Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, إِنَّ مَلَأَ, indeed the authorities, the people of the elite, okay, يَأْتَمِرُونَ بِكَ, okay, they're considering a plot against you, bi qatluk, with killing you. Okay, fakhruj, go leave the city. Inna laka min nasihin. Look, I'm giving you good, sincere advice. You better leave. Okay. So now what happens?
فخرج منها خائفا يترقب قال رب نجني من القوم الظالمين.
So he left. Okay, فخرج منها خائفا. So he left in a state of fear because he didn't know what will happen to his life. يترقب, but he was very vigilant. He was very watchful. He was very aware of what was going on. Okay, he knew how to get things done. قال ربي نجيني من القوم الظالمين, and he prayed to Allah. Now remember this word نجيني. Okay. قال ربي, oh my Rabb, نجيني, save me من قوم الظالمين. So save me from this Pharaonic system that now I'm getting stuck in. So then what happens?
وَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ قَالَ عَسَىٰ رَبِّي أَن يَهْدِيَنِي سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ.
So now he decided, how will he be saved? So فَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ. So he headed towards the direction of Madian, the place that I showed you on the map. Qala, he said, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, Asa Rabbi, perhaps Rabbi an yahdiyani, maybe Allah will guide me to something, better. Even though he knows Madian is going to be a place where he's not going to be in the palace, he's not going to be living that life of luxury, but this is what he had to do. Okay, so now the plot that we're going to be studying actually starts from here, the next verse. Okay, and this is where the subject of, you can say, manhood and womanhood starts in Quran, and you'll see why this becomes apparent as we study this.
وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ يَسْقُونَ وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمُ امْرَأَتَيْنِ تَذُودَانِ قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا قَالَتَا لَا نَسْقِي حَتَّىٰ يُصْدِرَ الرِّعَاءُ وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ.
So here it is. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, فَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ الْمَدْيَنِ. So he reaches the water place of Madian. Okay, there was a well, and maybe a type of big well that had a big rock on top of it. You'll see why I'm mentioning that. But either way, وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ الْمَدْيَنِ. So when he came to the water of Madian, وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ. He found a people there, right? Meaning men. Okay, يُسْقَوْنَ, who are giving water to their flock. What else does he see? Now he's tired. He's been on a trip. He has his own pain, right? Keep this in mind. He has his own situation. He has his own worry, okay? وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمْ مَرْأَتَيْنِ تَزُودَانِ. But he saw two women standing apart from the men, away from the men, keeping their flocks from going towards the water. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put rahmah in the heart of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and he went up to them and said, قَالَ مَا خَطُبُكُمَا, what is your affair? Like, why are you two standing here? Meaning, is there no man over here that would help you out? There's no one to help you out. Like all these men that are lined up to give their flocks water, not one of them thought maybe we should help these daughters of a prophet. So now, قَالَ فَمَا خَطُبُكُمَا, what is your affair? قَالَتَا, so the two sisters, they said, لَا نَسْقِي, we don't give water. Okay, حَتَّى يُصْدِرَ, until رِيَاءَ, until the shepherds they leave. When the shepherds they leave, then we give water. And for further clarification of their situation, they say, وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ, and our father, he's a sheikh, he's an old man, meaning sheikh is a man whose oldness becomes apparent. You can see looking at him, he's old, right? وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ, so he's old and he's, very old. Shaykhun Kabir, very old. Then what happens? So I'm just giving you the plot before I'm giving you the explanation. Okay, what does this have to do with manliness and how these things can be looked into from these verses? Now what happens as a result?
فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير.
فسقى لهما. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he then took looking at these sisters, right? He took their flock and went in line and then gave the water to their flock and brought it back to them. And ثُمَّ تَوَلَّى, and then Musa alayhi salatu wasalam turned away, right? إِلَى الظُّلِّ, to the shade of the tree. Why? Because it's hot and it is the desert, and any shade is helpful. And trust me, if you've ever been to these places, you'll know that even a small shade is very helpful under that burning sun, where like, I remember, I mean, I was very young at that time where we went towards like, because I was in Egypt, but when we went to the desert, it'd hardly be 5 minutes and you'd be like feeling like it's just so hot, right? Where's my water? So tawalla ila dhulli faqala, and he said, and we're going to study this dua a little bit and the effects of this dua over here. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. My Rabb, inni lima, indeed whatever, ma anzalta, whatever you send down upon me, ilayya, to me, min khairin, of goodness, inni faqir, I am a total independence of it, whatever good you send me. Okay, so we'll study that dua shortly, inshallah.
فجاءته إحداهما تمشي على استحياء قالت إن أبي يدعوك ليجزيك أجر ما سقيت لنا فلما جاءه وقص عليه القصص قال لا تخف نجوت من القوم الظالمين.
فجاءته إحداهما, so one of the two came to him. تمشي على الاستحياء, she was walking, you can say, in a modest way. Okay, this also becomes very important part of our discussion further. قالت, she said, إن أبي يدعوك, my father is calling you, he's wanting to see you, ليجزيك, because these were a people of honor. Nothing comes for free. And هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان, the reward of goodness is nothing but goodness. If someone did goodness to you, you have to do goodness back. And over here, I want to say, you'll see this in this part of the Quran as we talk about these different relationships between the daughter and the father, the Prophet Musa, and how he kept his relationship with this particular family and his general character, as you'll see. But, hal jaza'ul ihsani illa al-ihsan, what is the reward of good except good? This is how Allah is, right? Allah rewards good for good. That's how people are in relationships to take. But these were people in relationships to give. Okay. So you have to ask yourself, in the relationships you're in with your parents, with your spouse, with your siblings, are you in a relationship to give to them, or are you in a relationship to take from them? Okay. If they do good to you, you must do good back, because everyone has an emotional bank account. And sometimes, like for example, the wives, they feel they are giving and giving and giving, and the husbands are taking and taking and taking. Well, no, it should be the wife gives, the husband gives back. The wife gives and the husband gives back. And that keeps everything in check. Anyway, so so nothing, this attitude that, that if someone did us a favor, we have to return the favor is very, very important. Uh, as I was growing up, I remember my grandparents, if someone gave me a gift, they would be like, okay, they gave you a gift, we have to give them a gift back, kind of like that. فَجَاءَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى الْإِسْتِحْيَاءِ. So one of the two women, they came modestly. قالت إن أبيك يدعوك, my father is calling you, ليجزيك, to give you a reward, أجر, for the reward, بما ما أسقيت لنا, for the water you gave to our flocks. فلما جاءه, so now when he comes to, now this is Musa, the future prophet, meeting the prophet of that time, most likely, Shuaib alayhi salatu wasalam. So now when he meets him, and so now he tells him the story of what happened in his life. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ, when he came to him, قَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَص. This is where the word qasas comes. Qasas means stories, but qasas also means to follow something step by step by step, to trace everything back, and so he traced everything back to the beginning, to his whole life story. And so now he says, Shuaib alayhi salatu wasalam, La takhaf, don't fear, najawta. Over there he did dua in the beginning, if you remember, najini min qawmin zalimin. So people that are wanting to do hijrah, by the way, one of the very good du'as for the people that are going to want to do hijrah and planning for hijrah is this dua, because this is a dua of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam before his hijrah. Okay. And then there's the hijrah dua of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which I can also show you maybe later on today. But this is the dua. So there are two du'as of hijrah in the Quran that we have for sure. One is the dua of hijrah of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam right over here. Rabbi najjini min al-qawmi al-zalimin, with specific reference to it being the Pharaonic model. Okay. And then you have the general dua given by the Prophet, that's in Surah Al-Isra. Rabbi adkhilni mudkhala sidqin wa akhrijni mukhraja sidqin waj'alni min ladunka sultanan nasira. And so anyway, so he said, Najawta, you have been saved now, min qawmi dhalimin, from a wrongdoing people. Okay. So now this is the you can say the verse that we're actually going to be, everything will be around this verse. So we'll do this verse and the next verse, and then we'll start actually discussing the subject at hand.
قالت إحداهما يا أبت استأجره إن خير من استأجرت القوي الأمين.
قالت, so one of the daughters said, now, these are women of dignity. Okay. They're going to protect these women. They didn't go, because what would happen today? The way women are programmed today, if men are lined up, they would say, well, I'll be in line too. Right. And so just they're very, very aware of their modesty and very aware of their dignity, which we're going to talk in some detail about. But over here, I want to make this point. these women who saw the character of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, how did they describe this man? And for what purpose? You see, if and what is the some interesting points that come out. قالت إحداهما, so one of the daughters said, Ya abati, oh my dear dad. So now this is telling you the relationship between the dad and the daughter, which is a very, very special relationship. Okay, because the daughter gets her sense of how I'm to be treated by men. Her first experience of that is through the dad. So if the dad is always honorable to his daughter, always respecting his daughter, always caring for his daughter, she's going to expect that from other men in her life. If the father is abusive to his daughter, then when the man in her life is abusive to her, she's going to think, oh, this is how it is. This is how it's supposed to be. You know, dad cusses at me, dad hits me, dad does this to me. And then my husband's doing the same thing. It's not different, right? So the standards, this is why if you look at, I mean, this is a whole subject in itself, but if you look at the relationship between the Prophet and Fatima, right? Where the Prophet's sitting, and if he sees Fatima, he stands up and puts a piece of cloth and has his daughter sit where he's sitting, or he goes up to her and kisses her in the forehead, and so on and so forth. So the way a father treats a daughter is how the daughter understands that I need to be treated by other men. Okay. So over here, you see the daughter-father relationship. قالت إحداهما, so one of the two, they said, Ya abati, oh my dear dad, right? They care for their dad. Why? Because their dad has treated them with respect. And both of the daughters, if you remember in the previous verse, right? They said, Inna abana shaykhun kabir, our father is an old man. But they have a very honest, a very frank, a very open communication. And so now here, one of the daughters is saying, قالت إحداهما, one of the two women, they say, Ya abati ista'jarhu, dad, you should hire him. Right? Inna khayra man ista'jarta, the best of those people you hire has what qualities? And this is the real focus of today. Qawiyul amin. He is qawi, he is strong, and amin, trustworthy. So we're going to look at this word amin in detail. This is what we're going to focus on. But I'm not going to focus on it right now. But this is the essential quality that gets Musa alayhi salatu wasalam a job. Okay. And sometimes, you know, Omar radiallahu anh did this, that before he married one of his daughters, he hired the man to work with him. And then he even had his daughter kind of like work with him before he got them. And he asked his daughter, are you okay with him? And then she was, you know, she was fine with him. And that's how they got married. So over here, she's saying, hire him. Okay. And he has a very important quality. And this is also very, very important because a lot of sisters that are considering marriage, this is the first, one of the first questions they should ask themselves or look into when they are dealing with somebody from the other gender to consider in marriage. This is the most important. This is more important than prayers. This is more important than anything because this will keep the marriage intact. Okay, this will give the female that she needs in the marriage, the function that she needs in the marriage. And I'm going to explain that to you in some detail as we look into this word qawiyul amin. He's strong and he's trustworthy. Okay, so now this dua that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam had done over here in ayah number 24. Okay, and I'm just going to have Sheikh Khalil Khusri read it one more time so then I can tell you what was the result of this dua.
فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير.
فَسَقَى لَهُمَا. So now when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam did a good deed, then he did the dua. And this dua that he did, okay, that he did, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. Oh my Rabb, inni, indeed for me, lima anzalta ilayya, whatever good you send down upon me, whatever doors you open up for me of goodness, I'm of complete dependency of it. Now, I might go into the details of what is a faqir, but not right now. What was the result of this dua? He got a job and then he got married. Okay. And then so he said this dua, and then immediately what? فَجَاءَتْهُ إِحْدَاهُمَا. One of the girls came, right, and told him, إِنِّي أَبِي يَدْعُوكَ. My father is calling you. When he goes to his father, the daughter says, إِسْتَعْجَرْهُ. Why don't you hire him? Right? Because he has a certain very good manly quality, a very basic manly quality that none of those other men had. Okay, but he had this, so you should hire him, and we can trust him because we're weak. The father's old. There are two daughters, so you need somebody trustworthy. So what does that mean? Okay, and then the ayah number 27, he tells him, as I'll have Sheikh al-Khusri read this first, and then I'll explain what's the marriage part.
قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين على أن تأجرني 8 حجج فإن أتممت 10 فمن عندك وما أريد أن أشق عليك ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصالحين.
So here, because of that dua, he got the job. And then here, because of the dua, he gets married. And then what is his mahr? I'll explain that to you. قَالَ إِنِّي أُرِيدُ. And now the Prophet of Allah says to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, إِنِّي أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُنْكِحَ إِحْدَى إِبْنَتَيْنِ هَاتَيْنِ. I want you to marry one of my daughters. Okay, as you know, in the Sharia, you cannot marry two daughters at the same time. And تَأْجَرْنِي 8 حِجَج. But you will work for me 8 years. Okay, meaning that was his mahar. His mahar was, his dowry was that he would work, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam would work for the family as a shepherd and in farming for 8 years. Okay, and وَإِنْ أَتْمَنْتَ 10, and if you complete 10 instead of 8, فَمِنْ عِنْدِكَ. That's from you. That's extra. You don't have to do extra too, but you have to do the 8. Okay, and this is how men talk. So Musa and Shu'aib, two prophets, are talking. He says, وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أَشُقَّ عَلَيْكَ. I don't want to make things hard for you. So that's why, I'm just saying 8 years, and then you're free to go wherever you want to go. Satajiduni insha'Allah. You will find me, insha'Allah, min as-salihin, that I'm amongst the righteous. I like to make things right, and I like to make things good. I don't like fasad. So the opposite of fasad, salihin. Okay, so now this is the dowry of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to marry his daughter. And this also gives time for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to give training to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. As I said, Musa already knew the Pharaonic model. He was raised in the palaces of Pharaoh, and he knew all the protocols and the functions and how they form their laws and all of that in the palace. Now he was going to get prophetic training. Okay. And then now these two men are talking. Okay. And so let me just have the recitation, and then I'll.
قال ذلك بيني وبينك أيما الأجلين قضيت فلا عدوان علي والله على ما نقول وكيل.
So this is how people that are trustworthy, they talk. قال ذلك بيني وبينك. Look, this now agreement is between me and you. It's not written, it's verbal. You gave me my word, right? So قال ذلك بيني وبينك, this is between me and you. أيما أجلين, which of the two, 8 years or 10 years, قضيت, which of the two of the conditions I fulfill, right? فلا أدوان علي. There's no harm upon me as long as I meet one of those two conditions, either 8 years or 10 years. Wallahu ala ma naqulu wakil, and Allah is a witness over what we have just stated together. Okay. Now Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, remember, he's a strong man. He hit somebody and he died. He could really harm this family, but they were a good judge of character, especially the daughters. They knew how to be a good character of men, which is something lacking from the sisters today. But what is it that they were judging him upon? So this is what now I want to focus on. So قالت إحداهما, so one of the daughters says, Ya abati, oh my dear dad, ista'jarhu, hire him. We can trust him. Why? Because they had seen his character, which is what I'll explain to you. قالت إحداهما يا أبتي, one of the daughters said, my dear dad, hire him. And these girls of dignity, they know even how to like take things from phase to phase, right? And so she doesn't say, get me married, but she says, hire him. Not necessarily that she was looking to get married, but still she was able to, and then now the quality, in khayra man ista'jarta, the best of the people you can hire, okay? And that shows you something. If somebody's good enough to be hired for a job, then he's also what? Good enough to be married. If he's responsible in a job, right? If he's responsible enough to be in a job and he has these two qualities in his workplace, then he has good enough qualities to have this also in his marriage, which is al-qawiyu al-aminu, strength. A lot of men have strength, and instead of using their strength as amin, as a place of security and tranquility, and giving her that sense of tranquility, inner amin, even the word amin we say, I'll go into that maybe if we have time, but qawi al-amin, as you know, is means trustworthy in the general sense, but I want to go a little bit deeper today. Okay, so but before I show you the dictionaries on the word amin so that we understand this, I wanted to say that some people use their strength in domestic violence. They use their strength to, instead of being a source of tranquility for the wife, instead of being a source of peace for their wives, they use their strength against their wives, right? So Qawiyul Amin means that he is strong and he is a place of security and tranquility, and he is a person that will bring peace and tranquility into our environment, and he'll use his strength for that, not the opposite. Okay, and he's trustworthy in what sense? He is qawiyul badani, qawi in his body, amin in his character, right? So amin, trustworthy. He will not do khiyana. He will not be. He will not deceive us. He will not be treacherous. Okay, so the opposite of amin could be khiyana, okay, or kha'in. So he is a person of tranquility. Now, what happens in the male and the female relationship, I'm going to go into some detail about this, but just keep this wordings in mind. Now, with these wordings in mind, now let's look at the earlier story that happened. That how did they come to the conclusion that he is qawiyul amin? So now let's go back to the beginning. وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ الْمَدْيَنِ, so he comes to the water of Madian. وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ يُسْقَوْنَ, and he sees that there are a group of men, they're giving water to their flock of sheep. Okay. Now, it's very easy to be nice when other people are nice. But it's very hard to be nice and not to look for your advantage, right? Here's a strong person who could be looking for what's my advantage in helping these girls, for example? He could be looking for his advantage. How can I use this to my advantage? وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِ امْرَأَتَيْنِ تَزُودَانِ. But he saw two girls keeping their flocks away from the herd of men. Now, why is this important? I'll go into it. But the first point I want to make, which I made earlier, is قَالَ مَا خَطُبُكُمَا. What is your affair? What happened to you girls? Like, why are you here? Why are you not able to, give water, right? So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, as a person of qawiyul amin, strong, and a person of trustworthiness, when you have this quality, a third thing automatically comes to you, and that is rahmah, mercy. Because a person that's not responsible, a person that is not trustworthy, will not have as much rahmah as somebody who has a sense of responsibility. Okay, a person who has a sense of responsibility and he has strength to do things, and then he is trustworthy. A person that's trustworthy will always have more rahmah, because he'll be in a situation where he knows what responsibility is. So he'll be able to have rahmah upon people when they need it properly, which I'm going to come into in a second. قَالَ مَا خَطُبُكُمَا. So what is your affair? Meaning he's asking the girls, right? And so here's Musa. He's tired. He has his own pain. He has his own fears. He had no need to go to these girls and worry about them. But it bothered him as a responsible person, as a person who had these two qualities. May Allah give them to all of the men here and to the whole of the ummah, rather. Ameen, Allahumma ameen. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam cared to ask the girls, what is your affair? What's happening here? قَالَتَا لَا نَسْقِي. We don't give water حَتَّى يُصْدِرَ الرِّيَاءُ. Until the shepherds they leave. Because these girls were women of dignity. And one of the things I want to talk about is the symbiotic relationship between being qawiyul amin and having modesty. So we're going to come to that in a second. قَالَتَا لَا نَسْقِي حَتَّى يُصْدِرَ الرِّيَاءُ. We don't give water until the shepherds they leave, because they didn't want to be part of the hustle and bustle, and then and this is where the caveat between Western thinking and Islamic thinking regarding gender relationships is, right? So the Western relationships would say, stand in line with the men. But what doesn't happen as a result of that is that women are not told by men in Western society also. The women have to learn it through experience, where you will hear all sorts of statements like all men are dogs, etc., etc. What women don't learn about the mindset of the man is, and this is one of my shiekh used to say, when you talk about gender relationships, be very clear, because girls and women sometimes don't understand how the male mind works, which is that men sexually judge women, period. It's part of their makeup. It's part of how they look at women. It's part of how they judge women. It's so that in order to save your dignity, so there are certain rules that Islam gives, which I'll come into that in a little bit. قَالَتَا. But these were women who were very aware of that, right? That we don't want to be shoulder to shoulder with other men. And that's not to say that I'm not saying something about today's situation. I'm making a general principle. So once we have the general principle in mind, then we can talk about the specific situations that exist today, because many women have to work. And there are many sisters who work who are more modest than sisters that are in niqab and at home and backbiting or, wasting their time doing, not necessarily positive things. So it's not about that. It's about the attitude. Okay. It's about the attitude of a person's dignity, right? And it's about having a moral stance and letting other people know that you have that moral stance, right? It's that uncompromising moral stance. So at the one side, if the girls, they lined up with the other shepherds, the men, right? They could say, well, it's our independence. We're independent to do, and we're free to do whatever we're doing. But at the same, what they lose in the process is their moral, you can say, dignity. And so, because then men will judge them and read something into it that's not there and that's not true, and then they will think that, and so they were very careful about that, that making sure that it is very, very clear that where our moral stance is. Okay, so قالتا لا نسقي, we will not give water, يصدر رياء, until these shepherds they leave, وأبونا شيخ كبير, and making it clear we do have a man over us, our father, but he is very, very old. Okay, and so now the only man that helps them in this situation, the only man that helps them is Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and he does it also in a very dignified way, right? He takes it, he takes the sheeps, he gives them the water, and then they see, wait, this man is like strong. So, like, according to one of the narrations, I'll mention very quickly, when the other people were there, they were helping each other because they knew the shepherds, they knew each other. And there was a well with a big stone, heavy stone on it, that it took many men to move. So Musa, here's this strong man. He has this flock of sheep. He takes it up to the well, and, he moves the rock himself. And people are like amazed, like, wow, this guy is strong, right? And he lets the flock have their water. They see how Musa is behaving with the other men, right? And how he cared to come to them, right? And so here is a situation where, right, if you are a person of responsibility in the truest sense, right, you are going to be a person who's going to care about how your daughters are feeling, how your wife is feeling, how your mother is feeling, how other people are, even if you're in pain, even if you have your own worries, even if you have your own, like I said, it's very easy to be nice when other people are nice. It's very hard to be nice when you have your own pain, right? And so here is Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. He didn't go to these women out of like a lust, okay? Uh, he went to these women because he thought there's something wrong here. And he asked them about it, like, what's wrong? And then they gave their reasoning. And he saw that these are dignified women. And so girls that take a moral stance will attract people of that nature, meaning Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Had they stood in line, then it becomes confusing that, okay, where do they stand morally? Okay, so unfortunately, we live in a time today where these things are not maybe as much appreciated. And so ayah number 24, فَسَقَى لَهُمَا, so Musa alayhi salatu wasalam gave water to these flocks, right? And they're seeing Musa alayhi salatu wasalam not only care for these women, but he also cared for these animals, right? He also cared for, he gave them water, fatawalla, and then they saw Musa turn away. He was not like interested in discussing things with them more than he had to, right? And I want to make a statement here, and that is that when women have discussions with men more than necessary, then wrong ideas come into the hearts of men. And so the Quran mentions this in Surah Al-Ahzab also, telling the wives of the Prophet that, talk to men basically according to need. And when men see this lady only talks to me according to her need and not more than that, right? And of course, it also depends upon personality. For example, uh, there's some sisters, who are, some sisters will have more conversation because of their personality, not because it's a personality thing. It's not because they're trying to cross any lines or say anything. It's just their personality. That even when they're talking based upon needs, right? They're talking, salams and du'as and how are you, how's your wife, blah blah blah, right? So فَسَقَى لَهُمَا, so Musa alayhi salatu wasalam gave water to them, and then he turned away from them, إِلَى الظُّلِّ, and then he went to the shade and he did this dua. So for a good deed, he asked Allah, Allah, I did a good deed, please help me out, right? Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. And this is the dua that gave him the job. This is the dua that gave him a wife. Now, what is the quality of women? And what is the relationship between being qawiyul amin? somebody trustworthy and strong. Unfortunately, we live in a time today where I've seen brothers say, like, after they're married, they'll be like, oh, yeah, my wife can beat me up. Like, so you have one extreme where men are beating up on their wives, and the other extreme, what? That where it's like, oh, yeah, my wife can beat me up, right? It's like, okay, because strength is part of masculinity. That's what it is. A man should always be interested in what gives him strength. A man should always be interested in uh, power. He should always be interested uh, in his personal strength, and so a dignified man will always try to be stronger. And this is what the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam: a strong believer is better than a weak believer. فَجَاءَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى الْإِسْتِحْيَاءِ. So one of the women, they came with istihya, with modesty. Okay, now istihya also means life. If so, what is the relationship between modesty and life? I'll discuss that in a second, if we have time. قالت إني إن أبي يدعوك. So she said to him, look, my dad is calling you. Again, she's referring back to her dad, making it very clear, I have a support system, right? It's very clear that women let men know when they're not married, especially, that they do have a support system. And if they don't have a support system, it's very, 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 very important for women to have a support system, especially of some man that they can trust. Married or not, they can make some imam of a masjid or some brother that they really respect, their wali, their caretaker. Okay. One of the reasons over here I want to mention of even the rulings where it says that one man is one man and two women as witnesses. One of the reasons is that a woman would not, because I'll give you an example of this in history. There was a case in which Imam Shafi's mother was called to court, and so now the judge wants to interrogate her. So now he wants to interrogate her. She's going to be alone in a room with the judge, and the judge is going to be interrogating her. Okay. And so that's not a situation. That's why two women, even though the testimony, if you read the Quran, is given by one female, the other is there just as a support system in case she forgot something or something like this. But the testimony is from one female, but the two are there because why? When they're being interrogated by the judge, she has a support system. So Islam wants this, when you look at the overall workings of Islam when it comes to women, one of the key things you'll find in Surah An-Nisa and other chapters of the Quran and in Sharia in general is that a female should always have and should always find a support system. Okay, she should have a wali at all times where she can, while talking to other people, talking to other men, even other women. So she can say to other people, wait, and this is good for men too in a different way, but being able to say, look, I have my support system. And then it's not just in words, right? If you look at it, the frankness that existed between the father and the daughter, oh dad, hire him, the frankness that existed between the father and the daughter, that he was really a wali for her, really a advisor for her. He was really a support system for his daughters. Okay, so now let's look at the word qawiyul amin a little bit in some more detail before we go further, and then we'll look at the word istihya. And we're gonna haya. Remember, one of the most famous words used in the Quran regarding Fir'aun. Remember, the surah is about Fir'aun. One of the most famous words used in Quran over and over again about Fir'aun is what? يَقْتُلُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. He would kill their men. وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَهُم. And he would let life exist in their women. So now, يَقْتُلُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ, giving life. And it's the same word that is used for modesty. So what is the relationship giving life and modesty? This is one of the questions. But first, we're going to look at one of the dictionaries here. And we are going to look at the word aman. So now let me just do that. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So let's take a look at some of the words here. He was, became, or felt secure, safe. This is what a man should be to his wife, to his daughter, right? Secure and free from fear, right? No threats in the relationship, right? Tranquility, quiet, okay? He becomes quiet. It's the wife, it's the job's wife to point out the problems. It's the man's job to take those problems and solve them. You know, people always complain about why wives are complaining. It's not that. It's that Allah made them to find the problems and then man fixes the problem. Okay. And so it has nothing to do with free from expectation of evil. This is aman or aminin. Okay. The object, free from expectation of evil or an object of dislike or hatred in the coming time. Okay, he's trustworthy. Uh, to feel, uh, you know, ya'man ala nafsi. He is secure or safe or free from fear for himself. Okay. Uh, we're in a state of security or confidence. Okay. Uh, let's continue, inshallah. So she was she was secure from or free from fear of being weak. Okay. أن تكون ضعيفا. آمنت, okay, and then she was secure and free from stumbling and becoming jaded, okay. Uh, now let's go into some of the other meanings. Okay, it's somebody you can confide in. Somebody that's trustworthy is somebody you can confide in. A man is not somebody that the basic principle of being a man, qawiyul amin, he's strong and you can confide in him. You can tell him whatever needs to be told, right? He can be confided in. You can tell him secrets. He's not going to deceive you. He's going to be a man of his word, right? When the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the believer is such that when he gives his word, it's like you already have his hand. Uh, La imana liman la amanata lahu. That person has no faith who has no trustworthiness. So a lot of times men will say something to their wife, okay, okay, I'll do it. Or they'll give their wives a word, or we use inshallah in the wrong way. This all has to be very clear to the wife that when my husband says something to me, it's done. It's like done. I mean, of course, it doesn't mean it has to be on the dot, but I mean, it's like 99% done. The fact that if he said it, it's like she has the assurance of knowing that it's done. Now, I want to now talk about this in the light of like when we talk about marriages. For example, somebody is great and he's charming and he has a lot of great qualities and he reads Quran very beautifully, but when you're married, he can't keep his word. He says inshallah but doesn't do it. That's not productive from the perspective of security within the marriage itself. A lot of sisters, they come to me and they want to marry somebody religious. I tell them the most important thing, as the Prophet said, is not religiosity in marriage. Right? A lot of wives will come to me, I'm religious and I want to do things right, but my husband's not religious. The most important quality for a man in a marriage, when it comes to marriage, is good character. Is good character. Good character is more important than, from the perspective of the wife who is in a marriage, in security of her marriage, it's more important that he's good character than he has 10 juz or 100 juz memorized. Okay. Good character is the most basic quality, and in that good quality, in having good character, the most basic quality is trustworthiness. Somebody you can confide in, somebody you can trust in, somebody you feel secure with. And so a lot of times nowadays, guys, they threaten their wives, they put them in fear, they, take them to the rigor. And so this is, opposite. These are not men, is the point I'm trying to make. Okay, so the men are those who are a source of tranquility, even in conflict. The wife knows if I fight with my husband, he's fine. It's not a big deal, right? And um, so let's go back to this. So the most basic quality for marriage is trustworthiness. Over here, I want to mention something very important: is that sabr. If you see, one of the underlining things behind even qawiyul amin is sabr, because you can't be you, the one quality, if there's a few qualities, if you don't have, no matter how much good you do, it's not going to be constant. Okay, one of them is sabr. So you're very generous, but now you run into difficulty. Your sabr goes down. Your generosity will go down, right? If you're the other one is trustworthiness. Do you keep your word? It's the most basic quality of being a man. You gave your word, like you see in this in the Quran over here, between Shu'aib and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. They had a word of marriage, they had their dowry, they had their agreement. It's like, even in America, in the West, America, in the West, in the Western, Western America, like what's considered the West, people in Texas. And for them, even till today, it's about like, you gave me my word, that means it's going to be done. That's what it means to be a man, right? And that's what a father has to teach his son. A father has to teach his son that, his son, when you give your word, you got to do it, right? And not keeping that responsibility. And so he entrusted him with, or confided in him, power, authority, right? And when you give somebody what? A secret, you're giving them power, right? So then, hence, you can now say, uh, uh, men trust or confide in him with respect to times in which he calls to prayers. Okay. Uh, يأت منه الناس على أوقات التي يؤذن فيها. Okay, so the muazzin is somebody that is trusted, that he'll give the adhan at the right time, for example, right? So there, you don't have to worry, because when you can confide in someone, when you can trust somebody that they'll play out their responsibility as they should, then you don't have a state of fear. If you know that the person that you're with is not trustworthy, then you'll always be in a state of fear. Maybe he might not do it this time, and so on and so forth, right? And so that's a basic quality for hiring someone, and that's a basic quality for marriage. Okay. And then he was asked to take care of. Okay, so again, to trust. So now let's go on to the other side of this. Um, So, of course, we say Ameen in Salah, because when we're saying Allah, we're trusting you. Ameen, Allah, respond to me, I'm trusting you. So the same idea is there with the word Ameen. Okay. Istajib lana. Oh Allah, respond to us. We're trusting you will respond to us. That's what the word Ameen means. Okay. And so when you say Ameen, you're saying I'm in security. Because why? Because I know Allah is going to respond to my dua. Allah is going to respond to my dua. Okay. And so ta'min means to accept, right? When you accept something, it means that you made it secure, you made it safe. There's no fear that Allah will accept it. This is something Allah is going to accept. If He gave you the tawfiq, the ability to do dua, then He will also, inshallah ta'ala, accept what you're saying, right? One way or the other, you'll get it back. He hath rendered his servants secure from his wrongdoing. Amana ibadahu min an yadlimahum. Okay, so the question for the men is, how much of a safety net are you for the women, right? How much of a responsibility do you take? How much of security and tranquility do you bring? Can you be confided in, right? Can the wife tell you a secret and you won't use it against her, right? Sometimes I have cases where the wife told her husband about something that happened before marriage, and then he keeps bringing it up to her over and over again, using it against her, right? So this is something that's very, very negative. And la imana lahum, they have not the attribute of granting protection, right? Iman means trustworthiness. It also means protection. And so they want those women that want to be protected, like those women that were standing away from those other men. They want to be protected in their dignity, in their physically, emotionally, intellectually. They want to be protected. Then they're looking for someone that will protect them, that has that basic quality. And so the guys nowadays, especially this new generation, they don't have that quality so much. They don't have that sense of responsibility that one day I have to be a protector of women, that one day I have to be a source of tranquility for women. Guys don't grow up with like that anymore, with that idea, with that responsibility, with that sense of, this is, oh, yeah, I'll get married, maybe I might get married, maybe I not, this kind of like imanun ma'naha tasdiqun, to confirm, right? That the husband is trustworthy also in a sense. He's confirming the good things in her self-respect, her dignity, right? And its primary meaning is to become true to the trust with respect to which God is confided in one. Okay, and then over here, for example, in the Quran, you find, for example, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he has these qualities, and partly because of what? Why does he have these qualities? He has these qualities of manhood. He is able to give security. Why? Because he has security in his relationship with Allah. And so therefore, when you look at, for example, Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, you'll see in this short passage, right? How many times does Musa alayhi salatu wasalam turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So when he helps them, or before he leaves the city, right? Before he leaves the city, before he leaves, فَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا خَائِفًا. So when he was fearful, who was his source of security? And who was the one he confided in? So فَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا خَائِفًا يَتَرَقَّبْ. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam left the city in fear and in a state of vigilance. His source of tranquility and power came from Allah. قال ربي نجيني من قوم الظالمين. And when he says Ameen, he knows that Allah will accept his dua. You have to always make dua like Allah will accept it. And so he says, Allah, save me from these wrongdoing people. And then he does a good deed, and he turns and he says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. That, oh Allah, whatever good you send upon me, I am in complete dependence upon it. Meaning what? I have no sense of security without your help. Right? I have no sense of power. Faqir is the opposite of power. So I have no sense of security and power without your help. So the man seeks his power and his tranquility from Allah. And then he's able to transfer that sense of peace and tranquility. Don't worry, everything will be fine. That's how a husband should be with his wife and with his daughters and with his family. Everything will be fine. Everything is according to Allah's plan. He trusts Allah, and then he's able to bring that peace and that security to the women folk that are around him. Okay. And so now going back, inshallah. Okay. And so amana, meaning he believed. So ameen, I believe Allah will accept my dua, right? And saddaqa, to confirm. Okay. And then let's now go to the next. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so this would be it as far as amana is concerned. Okay, now let's look at istihya, of having shyness. Okay, so let's look at haya. Ha ya is the root word. Okay. Let me just get. Okay. So it starts from here. Haya means life. Okay. So what is the relationship between life and modesty? This is what I wanted to share with you. Okay. So of course, haya means life. Okay. But it also, the word haya, and I'm going to, because time is running out, but I'm just going to point out, he felt or had a sense of, he was or became moved with shame. Okay. And so in the word uh, haya is a sense of life, and somebody who feels is alive, right? Somebody who has a sense of or moved by shame or shyness or bashfulness. So modesty, right? Uh, istihya. So life, because to protect your shame is to protect your life. So you protect your modesty is to protect life, right? And so the two are interrelated. In fact, one of the meanings of the word istihya has to also do with the private parts of a female. Okay, but there is life if there's modesty, meaning societies are going to have life and they're going to grow. This is one of the meanings of the word haya, means to grow. You're going to grow as a society, as a people, spiritually, individually, and collectively. You're going to grow if you have haya, if you have life, as in the sense of growing, but you're going to truly grow if you have a sense of shame, right? The prophets of Allah used to say, if illam yastahi, if you have no shame, if al mashiat, then do whatever you like. If there's no shame, then there's no right and wrong. But if there's shame, then you should try to protect that modesty. Okay, he was ashamed of it on the account of it. Okay, and so it used in calling or urging to. Okay, it also means to be quick. Okay, but that's a different meaning actually. So haya. So now with this in mind, if we go back to the Quran, if we go back to the Quran, um, okay. فجاءته إحداهما. So one of the girls came to him. تمشي على الاستحياء. They came to him walking in istihya, with a sense of shame, meaning what? They came with a sense of dignity. They came with a sense of dignity. And women in Islam, the way they function is, don't talk to me unless I have talked to you. Okay, you have permission to talk to me when I have talked to you. Otherwise, the men are not allowed to talk to the women as a general rule. Of course, if you see something wrong, like in the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, you can approach the female or the sister and say, hey, do you need help? Right? There's nothing wrong with that. But generally, women are treated like, and they have to put themselves in a position where other men around them understand in society that you're not going to address a female unless she's addressing you, right? If she talks to you, you talk back, just like a queen in the olden days. فَجَاءَتْ فَجَاءَتْهُ, and came to him, meaning Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, إِحْدَاهُمَا, one of the girls, تَمْشِي عَلَى الْإِسْتِحْيَاء. How a girl walks, how a girl approaches, tells the guy or gives the hint to the guy of the person or the type of person he's dealing with, okay? Or the type of female he's dealing with. So if he wants, if the guy is looking for fun, as they call it, then, she'll walk in a nonchalant way and talk in a nonchalant way, and then the man's going to read into that. But if she's very like dignified, she keeps her modesty, she keeps her haya, then the man will, and the right person will find that attractive, right? So the way the female behaves around men or doesn't behave around them tells the right person or the wrong person of who should be attracted to that person. فجاءت إحداهما تمشي على الاستحياء. So one of them came with a sense of haya, with a sense of dignity, with a sense of modesty. And qalat, she said, inna abi, my dad, yad'uka, he is calling you, liyajziyaka, to give you a reward, ajra ma saqayta lana, to give you a reward of the good deed you have done for us of giving water to our animals. So now this quality of haya, right, which you see in them when they're standing away from the other men, and then how she comes back to Musa and then talks to him in a very modest way. Now, the question here that is that these women describe Musa alayhi salatu wasalam as إنه استأجره إن خير من استأجرت قوي الأمين, strong and trustworthy. What is the relationship between haya and trustworthiness is where I would like to now talk about this. And then I'm going to go over something very quickly, and inshallah we'll be done for the day. And if there's any questions on this topic, then inshallah I will take the questions. See, when a man is trustworthy and when a man uses his strength to bring, and he has that relationship with Allah, that he's getting his strength from Allah, and then he's also a source of tranquility for the women around him, especially, or the weak around him. And the women can confide in him. They can share secrets. The husband and the wife, they can share secrets. She knows her secrets won't be used against her, so on and so forth. When this is the situation, it becomes easier for the lady then to take a higher moral stance, right? It's easier for her to have istihya, to have dignity, right? When the men are no longer men, then what will happen? If these two girls, right, they were not standing in line because they were daughters of a prophet of Allah, right? But if it was any normal, even a moral girl, even a very moral girl, even a very pious girl, how many days is she going to stand away and wait for all the men to leave and then go find? It's not practical. So then she will be forced to be in a situation where her dignity is compromised because of the lack of manhood. And so this is the issue here, is that we live in a time that it's a very vicious cycle where women can't trust men because they're not qawiyul amin, because they don't use their strength for the dignity of women, for preserving the dignity of women. And women can't confide in them. They can't even hardly sometimes even think that they should marry them, right? And so there's that trust between the male and the female is broken. And that forces the women folk to do what? To go and stand in line to feed their animals. And then that puts them in a situation where they will now not trust the men at all because the right men were not there to begin with. And a lot of those men that they're standing in line with keep proving to those women that, see, these men are not worthy and these are not worthy men. And those men that were there were not worthy because none of them had the mercy to go to these girls, daughters, great granddaughters of Ibrahim والسلام, or daughters of Shuaib والسلام, that they should say to them, look, let us help you, right? And so when men they're not trustworthy. You can't be trustworthy if you don't have mercy, right? Because you'll never see that they need help. And so if you're trustworthy, you have rahmah, because if somebody tells you a secret, you're not going to give it away. That's rahmah. That's mercy. And so a relationship of mercy is tied in to a relationship of trustworthiness and safety and security and tranquility. They all go in here because where there's tranquility, like for example, when you do a dua to Allah and you say, Ameen, oh Allah, accept, I trust you that you're going to do something about this, right? There is mercy in that, right? In your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you, when you're doing that. So the same thing when men have no mercy towards the suffering of women, right? When men have, and this is what has happened now, that children are not raised with the idea that one day you're going to have to take responsibility over women and family and take care of them and protect them and to be a source of tranquility for them. Men are not raised like that. Men are not raised that once you've given your word, you have to keep it. You don't have many fathers telling their sons that, hey son, once you give your word, you got to keep it. You know, a lot of times you see mommy say to me, and I give my word and I don't want to do it, but I do it because I gave my word, right? And so you have this crisis of lack of true manhood. And as a result, you have women who don't trust men, and then they're not able to preserve their modesty and dignity. And they can't live that life where you don't talk to me unless I'm talking to you, right? They have to compromise. And so this is where we find ourselves. So before we end, inshallah, I want to do one thing. It's already an hour and a half, I think, almost, but I want to just go over these verses. I had other things I wanted to share with you, but I don't think I'll be able to do that. Maybe very quickly I will. I was going to have Sheikh Khalil Khusri read these verses, and then I was going to go over about 40 points about what we just did very quickly, and then we'll call it a day, inshallah. We'll do this quickly from here, inshallah. I just want to go over these verses and then over the 40 points, and then we'll see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows after that. Inshallah, we'll end after that.
ولما ورد ماء مدين وجد عليه أمة من الناس يسقون ووجد من دونهم امرأتين تذودان قال ما خطبكما قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير.
So ولما ورد الماء المدين يعني دخل إلى هذه القرية. So when Musa عليه الصلاة والسلام comes to the water of Madian, when he enters the city, وجد عليه أمة من دون الناس, and he found a people. Okay, nas here means men. يسقون, that they were giving water to their flock. وجد من دونهم امرأتين, and he found other than that 2 women standing back. Okay, they were not part of the hustle and bustle of watering the animals, keeping their flocks also. So now they're trying to keep the flock sees the water, but they're being kept back. And now Musa, even though he has his own worries, his own situation, people are trying to like catch him and kill him and assassinate him. He says, what's the affair of you two? Those 2 sisters, they said, لا نسقي, we don't give water, حتى يصدر الرياء, until the shepherds, they leave. When they're all left and they've done everything, then we go, وَأَبُونَا شَيْخٌ كَبِيرٌ, and our father, he's an old man, right? So we got to do this. And so here's that, the rahmah he had from Allah in his du'as. So now, فَسَقَى لَهُمَا, so now he gave water. Okay, he gave water to the animals. And one of the best deeds you can do is to give water. فَسَقَى لَهُمَا, so he gave water to those animals. ثُمَّ تَوَلَّى, then he turned away. Okay, إِلَى الظُّلِّ, to the shade of the tree, because it was very hot and he was very tired after doing this hard job. قَالَ رَبِّي, and if anybody has ever dealt with animals and sheep and moving them and pulling against them and pulling against their strength and keeping them from going where they shouldn't be going, in a whole flock of them, it's a very hard job. فَسَقَى لَهُمَا ثُمَّ تَوَلَّى إِلَى الظُّلِّ, then he turned to the shade and he did this dua. قَالَ رَبِّي, O my Rabb, إِنِّي لِمَا أَنزَلْتَ إِلَيَّ, of what, O my Rabb, whatever you send down upon me, min khairin, of good things, I'm completely in need of it. Okay, and then we talked about dua. We also say ameen, which means to accept, because you trust Allah, and how it's related to the word amana or aminin. فجاءته, so came to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, yeah, sorry, let me just do this.
فسقى لهما ثم تولى إلى الظل فقال رب إني لما أنزلت إلي من خير فقير. فجاءته إحداهما تمشي على استحياء قالت إن أبي يدعوك ليجزيك أجر ما سقيت لنا. فلما جاءه وقص عليه القصص قال لا تخف نجوت من القوم الظالمين.
So فجاءته إحداهما, one of the girls came, تمشي على الاستحياء, she came in with her dignity, with her modesty, keeping her dignity intact. قالت, she said, إن أبي يدعوك, look, my dad is calling you, ليجزيك أجر ما سقيت لنا, to give you a reward for the water that you gave. Nothing goes, just like Allah doesn't accept, Allah gives a reward for good. The same thing is with the prophets of Allah and the righteous people. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ, so when he went, Musa felt secure, and he even told him, قَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَص, he told him the whole event of what happened against him, how he's been framed and they're trying to assassinate him. And so قَالَ لَا تَخَفْ, so the Prophet of Allah says, don't fear, نَجَوْتَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ, you have been saved from a very wrongdoing people, and you are now in a land outside the city, outside the Pharaonic model. Now you are نَجَوْتَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ, you have escaped from a wrongdoing people. Now you're fine over here. Okay. So now
قالت إحداهما يا أبت استأجره إن خير من استأجرت القوي الأمين.
So now look at the daughter and father relationship. قالت, she said, إحداهما, oh my dad, يا أبتي استأجره, why don't you hire him? إن خير من استأجرت, the best of those you. Now who has the authority in the house? The dad has the final say. But she doesn't feel like, oh, if I tell dad, he's gonna threaten me or say something wrong, or he didn't say, oh, you want to marry, that's the other extreme. Oh, you want to marry him, that's why you want me to hire. No, nothing like that. Very dignified relationship, right? So inna khayra man ista'jarta, the best of those you hire, laqawiyul amin. And she even goes on in her openness, in her frankness, to describe the character of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. And over here, I forgot to mention, according to one of the narrations that I really like, the father asked her, how do you know he's qawiyul amin? Like, what did you observe? And then she told him that the well had a stone that he moved that was very heavy. And then she said, he never looked at me. So this was the way that she was able to judge his character. Okay. And then there are those women today who are like being looked at, right? So this is very like different way of, you can say, being and looking at things.
قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين على أن تأجرني 8 حجج فإن أتممت 10 فمن عندك وما أريد أن أشق عليك ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصالحين.
So now the father, Shu'aib, he says when he sits down with him and he sees him, that how he's in his work, and he confirms that yes, he is qawiyul amin, he really is, as my daughter said. Qala, he then said, inni uridu an unkihak that I want you to marry one of the ibnatiyya hatayn, any of these two women of my daughters you can marry. Uh, and now now look at the dad again. He is equal with both daughters. He's like, you can marry her or her. He doesn't, like a lot of times in some cultures, they're like, oh, if she's the older sister, she has to get married first and the younger sister later. No, you can marry any of these two you like, right? Ta'jurani, so ala an ta'jurani, that you work for me, thaniya hijaj. Here, hijaj means years, but it also means, and it's alluding to the fact that they would do hajj. I don't want to go into that right now. وَإِنْ أَتْمَمْتَ عَشَرًا, and if you complete 10, فَمِنْ إِنْدِكَ, it's from you. So now the father-in-law is putting the condition of the dowry, the mahar, to the husband to be. Okay, and there's a lot of interesting lessons in this, which I'll come to towards the end of my talk. وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ أَشُقَّ عَلَيْكَ, I don't want to be hard on you. Okay, I don't want to make hardship on you. No. So I'm going to try to keep things 8 years. And so in those 8 years, he does tarbiyah with a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Satajiduni, inshallah, you will find, inshallah, min as-sabirin. You will find me amongst the salihin, the righteous people. And then lastly, the last statement that's said between both of them regarding this, again, keeping his word.
قال ذلك بيني وبينك أيما الأجلين قضيت فلا عدوان علي والله على ما نقول وكيل.
قال, so Musa, right? He says in confirmation. So the father gives a proposal, and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is confirming. This is like ijab and qubul almost of a marriage. قال ذلك بيني وبينك. Look, this is now the agreement between me and you. أيما أجلين, which of the two terms that I complete, قضيت فلا أدوان علي, there's no harm done upon me, right? As long as I keep either the 8 years or the 10 years. والله على ما نقول وكيل. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a witness and is an advocate or the attorney over what we have both just agreed upon and said. And so Musa alayhi salatu wasalam completed his term of 8 years before he moved on. Now, the last thing that I want to share with you is now I wanted to go over some of the things that very, very quickly, inshallah, before I end. So what are the lessons here? So we'll just go over some of the lessons. Men are supposed to be secure, source of security for women, right? Source of tranquility for them. They can confide in their men. The crisis of responsibility that has occurred in the Muslim Ummah, that men don't want responsibility, right? And that's actually the reason many men are not getting married. They'd rather do their weed or their, and they don't want to get married because they know if I get married, then she's not going to want me to do weed. And so then why should I get married? Responsibility and mercy go hand in hand. Okay. Responsibility and vigilance and awareness go hand in hand, right? When you're responsible for something, you have to keep your eyes open. And oh, this lady needs help. This sister, she needs help. My daughter needs help. The person may not tell you. You have to be vigilant and to be able to see. That's part of trustworthiness. Trust in work and marriage, right? If he's strong and he's able to use his body to complete the work, and he's trustworthy, can be confided, he won't deceive you. That's good qualities for hiring someone. It's also good quality for marriage. Okay. And so no matter how tired you are, you have to cater to the wife, to the women folk, to the daughters. A man can't work all day, okay, and then come home and be like, I'm tired. Sometimes guys need their space and, they need to go into the man cave or whatever. But for the most part, your one job finished outside, your second job started inside. There's no rest if you're a man in that sense, okay? Purity of intention demonstrated by the dua of Musa alayhi salatu. He had no, he did a good deed and then he asked Allah for a favor after that. And so that proves the dignity and the pure intention of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam in helping those two women. Most non-men animals, meaning men today, will not bother women of morals and dignity. And that's the other thing, is that when women keep their high moral ground, it keeps the wrong type of guys away. Okay. Number 10, sisters walking together, not alone. So you have the two sisters together, right? And so in times of crisis, in times of chaos, very important to have a jama'ah. At the very least, a woman should walk not alone, right? She should walk with another sister. If she doesn't have another mahram, a man that she can walk with, then she should walk at least with another sister. Shu'aib as will be, Shu'aib was on the outside of the empire of Fir'aun, out in the farmland area near water, and Musa and Khidr events happened near the areas affected by Pharaoh. So I talked about that a little bit, where the boat was, hurt because under Fir'aun there are many Fir'auns, right? So you have pirates under them. The dignity of Shu'aib, as in paying Musa for the good he did to his daughters. Looking at the daughter and father relationship, very open, honest, and frank, and yet she is shy, not in the negative sense, but in the sense that she knows how to keep her dignity. She knows how to keep her dignity, and she also knows how to keep her parents' or father's dignity. Dua for marriage and work, I mentioned that. That's the dua that's there. Rabbi innani ma anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir is dua for marriage and work. Dua and good deeds, do dua and sadaqah. So you do a good deed or you give a sadaqah, then this is one way to have du'as accepted, and you can trust that if you do a good deed, no good deed, if a prophet of Allah doesn't leave any good deed unanswered, then how will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leave any good deed unanswered, right? Between, she can beat me up, to I'm stronger. So this thing that I was talking about, men nowadays, they laugh at the fact, my wife can beat me up on the one extreme, and on the other extreme, he's stronger, so he'll actually beat her up, right? And number 17, make sure you both have the strength to do the work and the honesty. And Ibn Khaldun, rahimullah, in his book, he says it's very hard to find somebody who knows the job well, and is honest. He said it's very rare to find a guy who can be fully trusted and not do khiyana. In his experience, some men especially will do khiyana in their work at some level. 18, it's okay for the son-in-law to stay at the father-in-law's house. Okay. 19, Hajj in those times, he was very near Mecca. I talked about that. Number 20, a conditional contract. Okay. Again, Musa as alayhi salatu wasalam and Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam keeping their words. Okay. Again, qawiyul amin, right? Concept of faqir and manhood. Like you are faqir, you can't, nothing is in your control. You really have no strength in reality. And your sense of tranquility and strength comes from Allah. And then that's where manhood comes from, right? You are the man always, even in movies, right? He trusts something supernatural will happen that will lead him through the way, so to say. Number 22, modesty and dignity in how you walk. Number 23, modesty and dignity in how you talk, how the girls were talking to Musa. And Allah specifically mentions the modesty of their walking. Why say my husband and my father versus being independent? Because this is to show other men treat women. And I'll tell you, women that get married without a wali are more likely to fall into a difficult situation than when she says to the guy, look, you better talk to my dad, or you better talk to my husband. Okay. When dads and husbands are not emotional self-esteem source for women, and that is when they are not trustworthy and strong, and they don't use their strength to the favor of men, but rather instead the opposite, always treated like royalty, which is you don't address me unless I address you. I talked about that. Musa is fully aware of the dhulm of Fir'aun, and he understands his situation, right? Allah says, but he was raqib, he was watchful of the dhulm and he was able to convey to the Prophet of Allah the dhulm that he had done, and he'd escaped that injustice. Finding a place of refuge. get married and get a job to practice Qawiyul Amin. Okay. So you get a job first, and then you practice being on time, keeping your word, dealing with people, dealing with the customers, learning patience, being trustworthy, helping people out. And then that also then gives you a hint that, okay, maybe this person's ready for marriage. Number 30, farming and being a shepherd, specifically running to save your life in the Sharia is allowed. And this is an example. Musa learned the ways of Fir'aun first, right? Royalty first, and then the deen. He learned the deen under Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam. Surah Al-Qasas is more focused on Fir'aun. And Surah Taha, these are the two surahs that talk about Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and more focused on, I wrote Dajjal, actually I meant magic. Okay. 34, women in the eyes of men, that men are always judging women from a sexual perspective, which is why, because men get stimulated with their eyes, women get stimulated by touch. So the yin yang relationship between Qawiyul Amin and Istihya. Uh, if men are true to their word and they're true to their responsibility, women can uphold a stronger or a higher moral standard in their life and hold up their dignity. Otherwise, when you kill the men, then and you kill them intellectually, morally, when you kill them, then the women's dignity is compromised. And when the tafsir of the words of the Quran, يَقْتُلُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ, they would kill their men and let their women live. Actually, one of the explanations of that in some of the tafsir is they would use the women, because once the men are gone, the dignity is compromised, and then the women can be used for other things. 36, when men become trustworthy, what happens? Then women's dignity is raised. Okay. Uh, and then I talked about يَقْتُلُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَهُم, that relationship to this whole situation. The link between life and modesty. Haya means life, and haya also means modesty. When you have modesty and dignity, then life will be grow. Life will grow, and life can continue. Societies can grow in a healthy way. Relationships are give and take. Be in a relationship to give, not to take. Right? If somebody in your relationship, your husband gives you something, he did a good deed to you, do something back. If the wife does a good deed to the husband, do a good deed back. Right? It's a give and take, and you should always be in a relationship to give, not to take. Okay. And so those are 39 points, and then I think I mentioned some others. So we'll end here, inshallah. I hope that was beneficial to all of you in general. If there's any specific questions about this whole event, I will answer maybe 3 to 4 questions, and then we'll call it a day, inshallah, because it's coming to 2 hours now almost. And thank you all of you for coming, and jazakumullah khairan. I really appreciate it. But I do want to talk more about this particular subject of fatuwa, of manhood, and marua. It's also called marua, Islamic concept of manhood. What does it mean to be a man? And I think that's a subject that needs to be there prior to the idea of having a jama'ah. And then once you have these real men in a jama'ah, and they have a sense of responsibility within the jama'ah, and they have an amir, and they have a shura, and they work responsibly, right? And these are real men, then they can really prepare for hijrah. And when they prepare for hijrah, then the goal is to do what Zulqarnain did, which is to establish a Medina, a city, or a village, or a place of security and refuge. And then from there, you can prepare the people that need to go out to do the things that need to be done, whether it is helping the Mahdi or helping other groups that need help. So anyway, so this is how I'm looking at it. And then there are other aspects to this, which I'll talk about at another time, inshallah. If there's anybody who has just wanted to say these qualities need to be festered at home, like, okay, so let me just read what's being said. Just wanted to say these qualities need to be festered at home, like being responsible for your sisters. Yes. Younger siblings, groceries, driving them around, chivalry, paying for them. all of this, and then you can be responsible husband to your wife and children. Yes. So that's a good way to do it, is have the brothers take care of the sisters, pay for them, take responsibility over them, and let the sisters boss the brothers around a little bit and let them deal with that. And that would be a good training for them. If there's any questions, I'll take questions, maybe 3 or 4 of them, and then we'll call it a day, inshallah. All right, inshallah, since there's no questions, we'll end. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله. How about if your little sister is going to college alone? I don't feel comfortable with that. Yeah, so those are things that the family is going to have to discuss and come up with either solutions or understanding maybe what's the best way to deal with that. Uh, Ustad, please, could you please read my above question? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't. If you don't mind, can you just type it again right now or copy and paste it right here? Because so then it'll make it easier. Oh, okay, I see. Okay. Was a video on those with severe mental illness like schizophrenia. Well, schizophrenia to me is mostly jinns. Okay. Autism, yes, we need to talk about that. That's a very complicated one. I know that autism is not a mental illness, but does impact one's life negatively. How are such people supposed to navigate their worlds in an individualistic society? Issues of interest would be marriage. Such people, such people do have desire, but great difficulty in aspects of social life. Yeah, people with autism. One day, inshallah, I'll definitely talk about that. Awareness, especially the ummah. Why are such people forgotten? Yes. So when even in Western society, even till now, they're very vigilant of their handicapped and so on and so forth, and at least at the legal level, right? We, the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because of some issues, we're not there yet. Okay, guys, inshallah, jazakumullah khairan, subhanakallah wa bihamd. As an older brother, I don't want my little sister to go to college alone. My parents are allowing it. Well, that's something that you have to sometimes accept, that things don't go the way we want them. And you have to come up with plan B if you can't do plan A. And if plan B doesn't work, then plan C is just to do dua and to try to do tarbiyah or to try to change things using dua. Because if you can't talk about it or can't enforce it, well then you've done your part. Okay, inshallah, jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone.